Okay. Thank you, Anuradha. You guys, this is my favorite line. I use it all the time. You do realize with all this white hair, people get very worried if they find me talking to myself. I'm old, but I don't think I'm old enough to have those worrying sort of symptoms. And Zoom has been a boon, of course, for all of us in the last 2.5 years. It's also a pain. Right at the end of the day, a computer science degree, but I do not know much about computer science as it is in modern day. I'd much rather meet you in person, Mandar. I'd much rather be in front of you and sort of do whatever we have to do rather than do it on Zoom. But thank you, the three of you: Amit, Prabhu, Rajkumar, Krishanu, Gaurav, Akash, Deepak, Pankaj, Shubha, Meera, Hendrik, and Savitri. Thank you, Rajkumar. Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to switch on the video? That'll be great. Okay. Please consider switching on whenever you can. I have a deck. It's going to run for about an hour. I'll have to. That's all right, Pankaj. Thank you so much for letting me know. It should be running for about an hour. But the deck's there's not a lot of writing in the deck, right? So the deck's only a placeholder. So most of the slides are like 1 point, and we're going to keep talking about it. I'm going to go very quickly since I have lost some part of the time, and I suspect we may have to cover a few things slightly differently now that there are a few of you who were not there in the earlier session. Stop me whenever you want to stop me. That's important. If you have a question, please ask. I may not be able to answer everything, but I'll certainly try. We will try and close by, say, 1:45 so that we can use the last 10-15 minutes to talk. Yeah, super cool. I believe a lot of what we're going to cover today is known, right? I mean, I've spent the better part of the last decade talking about marketing strategies to all kinds of companies, small to very large. And interestingly, everybody seems to have an opinion and a bit more on what a marketing strategy should be like. And my belief is that it's not an exact science, right? So there is no one good way to do a marketing strategy. And you would never know whether your way is a good way or not, or the best way or not. You could define outcomes, and you can have KPIs. We're going to talk about it right at the end, and perhaps it may measure up to that, but you would not know whether you could have done something better or not. So I think that's an important consideration to keep in mind, that what we are going to talk about is not exact science. I also feel, and I'm sure you guys are not one of them, I'm hoping you guys are not one of them. I also feel founders, startups, do not spend enough time on marketing. I also see that founders and startups, they know marketing is important. Everybody knows that, but they do not allocate sufficient resources, money, people, power, but most importantly, personal time towards marketing. And if there's one thing that we did last time, is we tried to look at marketing from a customer's point of view. We tried to look at certain aspects which we will sort of expand now. And how do we realign the thought that your product is not your business? I hope those of you who were there in the earlier session would remember that the product's not the business. And Meher, Isha, if you could share with everybody the deck that I've shared with you with the 2 rules. I will also make another deck for this one. And then between these 2 decks, all our colleagues over here would be able to sort of go through them. And the session's recorded anyways. And then they can figure out, because it's not a one-time activity. Right? One of the things that we will talk about Marketing is not a one-time activity. You don't do it once. You don't make a plan once and then sort of follow that continuously, because things are going to go wrong in any which ways. So that's important for us to remember. Okay, let us begin. So marketing strategies, the strategy word is an overused, underachieving word. I'm not even sure, because most of these words are so full of themselves. The words are so full of themselves. Most of these words, I think, are made keeping large corporations in mind. And then the smaller ones, the young ones, the ones that you and I are involved in, we have to catch up with the larger guys. And I think that's a bit unfair. There's not enough sufficient literature about what any of these things would be for a young upcoming startup. So I'm going to call this go-to-market, which encompasses your marketing strategy and the tactics that you would be deploying. Going super quickly. First question, please blurt out the answers, write in the chat boxes. What do we need to survive? What do we need to survive? It's a generic question. From a business's point of view, what do we need to survive? I know it's a very basic, it's not a clever question. Pardon me for that.
Customers.
Customers. Okay, very good. You've actually jumped to my sort of next one. So I'm going to go ahead. I say sales because you're on the same track. And then, I know the fact that you guys are here in this session and you have reached, sort of you're part of the Wadhwani family is because you look at your startup seriously and you understand that startups are slightly more than just making a good product. So you already know that. So you know that sales are important, and a large number of startups, I meet them so often. I get 10, 15 pitches a day, out of which almost, I don't know, 80% of them will talk to me that, hey, I can do everything properly, but sales is not something that I'm very comfortable with. And I find that, a bit confusing, because I wonder what is it that they thought it's going to be once they make their kick-ass product or service. Well, somebody has to sell it. So what you need to survive is sales. And then the question right after that would be, who do we need to survive, which you have already answered, that you would need customers. Much of what I do professionally, this is not really a profession of mine, but I run a few businesses and I invest in businesses. So I'm an entrepreneur that way, but my professional pehetan would be that I still work as a consultant. And I teach in a few colleges, but primarily I'm a consultant. And as a consultant, what I do, and I do all kinds of consulting, and we have a reasonable sized consulting outfit. We have a few other people with gray hair like me, but almost everything that we do revolves around this one word. And what's interesting is that it's not about startups. It's equally true for very large corporations. In fact, I believe that large corporations often struggle is because they move away from what the customer needs and the customer wants. So in many ways, this is the centerpiece. This is the universe ka center. This is the focal point. Isi se shuru hai aur isi pe khatam hai. We spoke about the value of depth last time. We spoke about how all of us, all of you, all of us who are in the startup ecosystem, and I invest in businesses, so my risks are higher. My returns, when they happen, is also obviously higher. But since most of my companies that I invest in are at very early stages, the value of death is applicable to me, because if they all die, I will die. And I believe this is a very old picture. This has been there for a long time. I don't know, I've forgotten who was the guy who sort of made this. I think it's applicable to all of us. The value of death, it's a little fashionable, the name. It has, deep, dark sort of holes at every stage. And you can fall into those holes continuously. And I believe people fall into those holes continuously is because the top 20 reasons startups fail is because every point in the diagram, every point here, if you look at it, be it prototype, testing, product, market traction, growth, in this valley of death, you can fall at any stage is largely because you have not been listening to your customers properly. I believe that is the single largest reason. A lot of founders suffer from confirmation bias. A lot of founders, once they're convinced that they have got the right mixture, the right kick-ass mixture, which is going to make them a zillionaire, they start feeling that they understand the customer's pulse. And I think that's a very dangerous feeling to have. It's an important feeling to have once you are correct. But the moment you feel you're correct, you should be worried, because that is one feeling which can get you into a lot of trouble. That's one feeling which is not the same as confidence and conviction. I would much rather that you fear that you are not spending enough time with customers so that you keep doing it. I believe customer drives businesses. I believe customer does the business. And I believe customer is the business. I'm sorry, I'll keep harping on this. I'll keep saying this. But I don't think startups spend enough time with their customer. I think startups spend too much time with themselves. It's a little sort of a bit of a diagram, which I think is necessary in terms of the next 10, 15 minutes, what we're going to talk about. So business is essentially revenue minus expenses. So revenues minus expenses are going to give you sort of broad-based gross profit. And from those profits, let's actually, when I say expenses, let's make it simpler. So the sale minus buy. And then you have other kinds of costs. A lot of startups, maybe not necessarily at the early stage, but right after the early stage, struggle over here. Hence the word managed costs. It's a crucial sort of area that we need to think about, managed costs. So for me, the starting point is managed costs. So profits and managed costs, that's going to give you the reason why you're possibly doing the business. You may have other reasons, you may have social reasons, you may have a whole bunch of other reasons why you're doing your business, but let's keep the business conversation very banal and very basic. And let's say it's all about money, then it's profits and managed costs. But then just doing it once or twice may not be sufficient. You need to do with lots and lots of people. And hence come more problems, hence come more costs. But then you need to think about it. So doing it once, doing it twice, doing it 10 times may not be sufficient. You need to do it for 100 times, you need to do it for 1,000 times. A lot of startups struggle over here. What seems logical over here, and as you scale, do not necessarily follow the same pattern. But the next in line will be lots of customers. And then when you have lots of customers, hopefully what it's going to do for you is going to be cash flow. When I finished my engineering, a very long time back, I went and worked for a company for some time. And then I went into business. I did not have an MBA. And I had some entrepreneurial background. I set up my first business when I was in class 7. And I lost a lot of money then also, not a lot, but I lost some money. I lost books. I opened a library. And I've been doing little businesses ever since. And then in my high school and my engineering days, I used to work with my dad, who used to run a small business by then. We were abroad. So I was initiated in the world of business, which made me feel that I understand the world of business. And I thought, hold on a second, I do not know sufficient enough about money. So I thought I should go and take some learning. But I did not have the time or the interest to go and get an MBA. So I went and enrolled myself in a course called CIMA, Chartered Institute of Management Accounting. It's a body in the UK. I should my home was in London, and I started that course. I did not last in that course for too long because the books were this big, this fat, very, very sort of, as what I thought back then, very boring. And I dropped out after 4 or 5 months. I have started and dropped out of so many things. It's not fun. And I did not study that properly. And I wish I did, because I think it would have saved me a lot of heartburn, which I eventually had later on. But one of the things that I learned in that book, which I have not forgotten, is that there was this one big line. And I want you guys to please remember this line. Some of you already know it. Those of you don't, you should write it down. You should imprint this in your mind. The line goes like this: cash is king, not profits. A lot of startups, I don't think, understand the importance of this line. Cash is king, not profits. So how do you rotate and sort of move from cash to cash? That's crucial. I came back to India in 98, 99. I started a business. I grew very, very rapidly. And when I grew rapidly, somehow my narrative moved from cash to profits. And I felt what's important for me today, what I should be thinking about all the time is how can I increase my profits? Of course, as a businessman or woman, we would be thinking that, but I moved away from the narrative of cash. Today's businesses are all about cash flow. And I want you to remember that. If you have the right kind of cash flow, you can do pretty much all. You should be able to do many more things than having profits on your books, but no cash in your bank. So profits and manage costs, you need lots of customers, you need cash flow. And if this sort of almost circle work, that means you have a business model. Only then you have a business model. So when I ask people, what's your business model? They tell me that I am making this cup and I'm selling this cup. It doesn't mean anything to me. So I would want to know, what are your profit and managed costs? How are you getting lots and lots of customers? And how is the cash moving? If you can tell me all these three things, then I would understand that you have a business model. From an entrepreneur's point of view, I want us to all understand this. And from an investor's point of view, I ask people, what's your model? So the first question is, who are you? Second question is, what is it that you do? And then the third question is, what's your model? Or I try and understand what the model is. And if that model appears to be to me complicated, I move on. I don't invest. So that's the next thing that I want you to remember. Profit and manage cost, lots of customers, cash flow, cash is king, not profits. And the next thing is, all of these things is business model. The next thing is, it needs to be simple. If it's not simple, there is a problem. And there's a reason why all these things are relevant from a go-to-market marketing strategy point of view. Because if you have a complicated model, it gets complicated to sell. As simple as that. And I don't know whether we'll have time today to discuss business models of successful companies. Maybe Wadhwani will organize another session, or you should go online and look for it, and you will see that essentially Amazon is successful because they are simple. That word is important. Okay, to sell well, we must have clarity on markets and customer segments. So we move on. To sell properly, assuming you have all of these things, now you've got to get lots and lots of customers, that little part over there, you need to have absolute clarity. Please use the word clarity very carefully, because I don't think a lot of people use that. A lot of people understand the importance of that word. Do you have clarity? Now, most of us don't have clarity. I mean, people, I don't know, most of us don't have clarity about anything, right? About life per se. But an entrepreneur's best buddy is clarity on what he or she is doing. So do you have clarity in markets and customer segments, value proposition, relationships and channels? But to get there, to get clarity, you need to have absolute clear understanding of your goals and objectives. And I'm going to share right at the end two types of, I'm not going to give you templates, but I'm going to talk about what I use, irrespective of the size of the business. Some of the businesses that I'm associated with are no longer startups. Some of them have been around for 10, 12 years. Some of them employ hundreds of people. One employs more than 1,000 people, right? Even then, there are certain things that I do, notwithstanding the size of the company, whether it's 5 people or 500 people, I follow a few things in marketing strategy. And I'm going to come to that right at the end. But nothing works unless you're absolutely clear about clarity. Clarity comes from when you understand what are your goals and objectives. Goals and objectives can be broad-based, and then you should be able to drill down. So if I say, this is my second culprit. My first culprit is the office Wi-Fi didn't work. Second culprit was my Airtel card dongle. Third is my phone, which luckily is working now. And if I have to sell this, I have to figure out इसका goals and objectives क्या है. I'm sure somebody in Airtel would be doing that. कि मैं इसको कैसे बेचूंगा. मैं कैसे बेचूंगा के पहले मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है. मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव है कि बहुत ज्यादा डोंगल बेचना है. या मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है कि मैं एयरटेल का इकोसिस्टम में हर किसी को कैसे भी वो खींच के लाऊंगा. There are two separate objectives because I'm pretty sure Airtel इस पे पैसा नहीं बनाता है ज्यादा. कितना पैसा बनाता होगा? This is another $500 that I pay per month, right? And it's a fixed data. But Airtel does not want me to go away from the Airtel ecosystem to any other ecosystem, right? ये 2200 रुपए इसके लिए लेते हैं उन लोगों को, बकवास है. There's really, I mean, that's of no consequence. It's a one-time thing. Now, what are the goals and objectives that Airtel has for this device? Now, if you are in the business of say EdTech, and you have you teach your I don't know, let's say a Baiju type EdTech, which means you're basically giving coaching. What's your goal and objective? Now you may have that on a broad-based way, and then you can have super fine way. You need to have these goals and objectives very clear. Once you have that, you should be able to identify what's your market. Now, big motherhood statement over here. I'm going to make plenty of them today. I have seen that startups tend to have far bigger markets than they should be addressing. Please hear me carefully. Larger, bigger companies seem to have sharper markets, and startups seem to have wider markets, which I think is a mistake. Because we are struggling, हमें कैसे भी वो पैसा चाहिए, कैसे भी वो बेचना है हमें, तो हम जहां भी हमें हमारे लिए मुमकिन होता है, we go and sell. So हम सोचते हैं इसको भी बेचेंगे, उसको भी बेचेंगे, उसको भी बेचेंगे. So the motherhood statement is, if you're trying to sell to everybody, you're selling to nobody. So I don't want you to have broad-based market. I want you to have sharp, deep market. You're better off being the head of a lion than tail of an elephant, because if you're trying to sell to a wider market, you're going to dissipate your energy and your other resources, money, and most importantly, time, in trying to address different types of markets. So you should zero down your market, because every market will have its own customer segments. And inside that customer segments will have its own individuals that you could have to concentrate on. Every market essentially will need tweaking in your marketing strategy. So आप इसे छोटा करें, reduce करो, and keep it as sharp as possible. Within the market, you should have customer segments. Those of you who were not there in the earlier session, we had spoken about segments and persona in the last class. And that deck is available with Isha and Meher, and they will share it with you if you have not got it. So what you need to know is, who are your customer segments, right? And customer segments, you can look at it from different ways. The age-old way of looking at it is demographic divisions, which is male, female, age group, income, etc., region. You know, if you want to go further specific, you could look at it in many different broad bases. They call demographic divisions. But the real deal is when you go psychographic. What you really need to know is not just that Neera, whose video I can see, thank you for keeping the video on, is a lady, and Kaustav is a man. That's okay. That doesn't help us because there are 3.5 billion women and 3.5 billion men. So you want to zero down, right? So you can say Neera is Indian, Kaustav's Indian. That doesn't help as well because there are 1.3 billion Indians, and then 650 of them are like Neera, and 650 are like Kaustav. So it doesn't help. So you want to go deeper. So what you really need to know is what kind of a person Neera is. What you really need to know, what kind of person Kaustav is. And in today's modern day and age, when data is the new oil, it's possible to know that. And sharper, smarter businesses are continuously trying to find out, how does Neera think? And if I can figure out how Neera thinks or how Anuradha thinks, if I can understand, get a glimpse of that, then I can perhaps predict what Anuradha may do next, how our response to stimuli is going to be. Marketing is all about that, right? It's a response to stimuli. I'm trying to understand, because Anuradha fits in my market segment. She's perhaps the kind of customer segment that I want to target. I want to understand if Anuradha and Prabhu and Krishanu are going to be people who are going to buy my products and services. For them to do that, I'm trying to test that, right? I have got a few marketing campaigns, I may have some advertisements. And how do I know these advertisements are going to work for them? I need to know who these guys are. So I don't want you guys to say my customer segment is women ranging from 18 to 60. It doesn't mean anything. A lady who's possibly working, in a private or a government institution, or is working as a homemaker, is very different from a young lady who is 18 years old and goes to college. Anuradha, please go ahead.
Just now you mentioned that it cannot be that broad, like women from 18 to 60, we say. First of all, I'll just tell that my product is EV charging station. So now you tell me that demographically, if I want to say define that who is my customer segment, how do I do that? Because sure. It's very difficult to figure out that, okay, these set of people will be my customer.
Sure. So technically, EV charging station, why, anybody who's using an EV vehicle should be a customer, right? So demographically speaking, your first demography is, do you use an electric vehicle or not? I'm assuming it's an electric vehicle, right? It could be wide variety of other things. Right? So my first demographic question is, do you use that or not? That's a binary question, 1 or 0. Of course, this question will become even more relevant at 5 saal baad, ya 10 saal baad, when the country is going to be littered with electric vehicles and charging stations. You have an opportunity today. That opportunity is, there are not enough charging stations, and there are more and more people getting interested in buying an electric vehicle. So your demographic division is not just whether you use a vehicle or you don't use a vehicle. You have a whole bunch of other people who are waiting to know whether they should buy a vehicle or not, provided there are electric charging stations. You understand what I'm saying, right? So you have a third demography which is interested in electric vehicles, right? So that's a third electric. So if I have to do a market survey for you, I would not just go and ask, do you use a Tata Nexon or an MG Hector EV or the Ola scooters or whatever, right? I will not only ask, do you plan to buy in the next 3 or 6 months? I may even ask, how interested are you? Now, how interested people are is something which you realize that you move from a very specific question to a behavior-driven question, right? So I can stretch it a little bit more, Anuradha, and play along with me and stop me if this does not make sense. My question can also be, I am in a party and I hear, I'm citing an instance, I meet Kaustav over there. Kaustav was traveling last whole week and he comes back and he tries to sort of keep all his fuel expenses on one particular card. It's easier for him to sort of, expense that out from his businesses. So he comes and, calls gentleman who drives his vehicles, and, he says, let's go and fill up the cars. And he takes two of his cars. One he drives, the other his driver drives. The two of them go to the petrol pump. They put petrol. Oh, by the way, Kaustav is also an environment-friendly person, so he doesn't have any diesel vehicles. Right? He used to be very proud of that. Not so much right now. He goes and he fills up his cars with petrol. What used to cost him 3,000 rupees earlier is now costing him 4,700 rupees. And all of a sudden, Kaustav just spent 10,000 rupees on fuel, which should have been 6,000 rupees a little while back, right? And there's just two cars, right? And imagine if Kaustav had more cars. And he's thinking, hold on a second, ye kya hua? Right? That's what's happening. Petrol prices have gone up. And Kaustav starts thinking, shit, I should have got a diesel vehicle. And whilst environment's important to me. And then Kaustav's children says, no, daddy, we're not going to get environment. Why not electric? Not enough charging stations. So whether I want an electric car or not is a spectrum, is a continuum. Over here, I absolutely must have it. So I'm possibly going to buy in the next 1 month or so. Over here, the spark, the seed of thought in my mind. And it's a spectrum. And this is a very fast changing landscape right now, especially in your world. So the demographics is not just 1 and 0. I'm trying to impress upon you that the demographics can be many, many more. But where it is very different is the thought, whether should I want it or not. Now, if somebody says he wants it because he said yes to a form, that's one way of looking at it. There could be a whole bunch of other people who says he wants it because he's just so upset with his petrol expenses. Does that make sense? Now, the mind, if you can tap into the mind, you will see that it's beyond demographics and it becomes psychographics. Now, going back to your thing, 18 to 60, you're right. Technically, for Tesla, the entire thing is a market. Technically, for Bajaj or Mahindra or Tata, the big boys, everything's a market. But for a startup, yes, everything's a market for you. But Anuradha, what I want you to do is focus. I want you to individually focus. I want you to say, I am targeting. It could be that you're targeting a section of the society or a part of the city. You can choose. Because I want you to focus any demographics and then go into psychographics in there. Because if you keep it broad-based, you won't have sufficient time or money to spend your resources across that. So if you say, I'm going to serve everybody who wants to look at an electric vehicle or who may want to look at an electric vehicle, you will run out of money. You will possibly say, hey, I'm going to put up my electric charging stations along with all city schools or malls, I don't know, or parks, or I'm going to go and put up my mini electric charging stations in building complexes. So what you're now doing is you've actually broken down, you've taken the demographic study from people to something else. How many building complexes are there, right? You will say, oh, hold on a second. There are 1,000 building complexes. And you may say, no, hold on, I can't do all 1,000 of them. My MVP requires that I do 20. So I want to go and do it in 20. Now, you can say that I can go to Gurgaon, and there are 20 you can find like that. But will that be the way to go about it? Or should I do 5 in Gurgaon, 3 in Noida, 2 in Greater Kailash, 1 in Rohini? So doing spanning across the day. Depends what your target, how you want to grow. So if I am funding you, Anuradha, and I'm working for Tata, I will ask you to do the second. Because I want to tell the world that there are plenty of charging stations coming up across the city. But if I'm Anuradha, my business is only charging stations, I'm not going to spread myself thin, and I'm going to open it all over the city. I'm going to go into one zone, cover that, go to the next zone, cover that, and expand that. Does that make some sort of a sense, Anuradha? I'm sorry, you're on mute?
Yes,
Thank you.
It makes
Okay,
sense.
cool. Jaskirat, no worries. Hey, Jaskirat, you raised your hand.
Yeah, hi. So I just want to elaborate on Anuradha's question here.
Sorry, buddy, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Mm-hmm.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to elaborate on Anuradha's question here. I want to understand, does the customer segment should always keep on evolving? Because if I take Anuradha's case right now, I understand. I mean, I'm an EV enthusiast, but when I went to the showroom to ask the guys who are selling EVs, like who's the current audience for them, they tell me it's never the first car for people, it's the second or the third car. So in this case, I'm assuming they are the people who already have a big yard, who can afford 2 or 3 cars, bungalows, the infrastructure, everything sorted. So if I was Anuradha, I would be looking at business complex, maybe residential complexes, who don't have the infrastructure with a common parking lot where I can install the EV charging stations, right? But this is the segment I can start with maybe right now, maybe 6 months, 1 year, this is valid. But then 1 year down the line, the demographics, the psychographics, the everything changes. Then, so question, simply put, the question is, I think that the customer segmentation should keep on evolving, right? With more clarity, with more focus.
Absolutely, just you've nailed it. I think you've given a fantastic example, and that's exactly what we're talking about, going with business complexes or complex residential complexes. But you've nailed it, right? That's exactly the way it should be. It's never static. It has to evolve over a period of time, because business evolves over a period of time, right? So if you succeed, it's going to evolve. If you fail, it's still evolve, right? If, for example, you have tried to look at a market segment and you did not succeed, that's also evolution, right? So you have to keep changing that landscape, and rather you should if I'm you. So for example, if you look at the like Jaskirat said that he's an EV enthusiast just like me, and that's what they would say. We are looking at second and third car owners because it's easier target segment for them to go with, right? Nobody is going to be out of fuel all of a sudden and not have a car to go to work or whatever. It's still, people are going for low-hanging fruits right now. You're also trying to maximize your money right now. That's why the Tigor electric is, or the Nexon electric is like 7 lakhs more than the Nexon petrol, which it's kind of weird, right? Or the MG Hector electric is about 26 lakhs as against 17, 18 lakhs. So they're trying to maximize, but it's all going to come down in the next couple of years. It's going to come down, and it's fantastic, right? So your market segment right now could be to keep what they are saying in mind, or it could be just the next target segment, right? The next target segment could be literally first-time owners, or somebody who's got a scooter and now going for a car, right? So and like it, residential buildings, it could be schools, it could be colleges. Teachers are going to come in and the cars are going to stand there a whole day, so you should be able to put it in. So the market segment is going to continuously expand. And you're right. Thank you, Jaskira. Okay. Moving on. Within that customer segment, you build personas. I'm not going to spend time talking about personas. The reason you need personas is so that you can target and customize your marketing, communication, your literature. Because the more in detail you understand who your audience is, the better if nothing else, your copywriting will improve, right? So you need to define your personas as detailed as possible. If that was the homework, but I recommend that you do it. I want you to visualize. The power of visualization is paramount, right? See, entrepreneurs are people who live in the future. Right? You believe that for some weird reason your business will succeed and you will become a successful entrepreneur. There is no reason for you to believe that, because probabilistically speaking,
I think I reconfirmed with Aarti.
Okay, there's sorry. Okay, I think there's somebody is unmuted over there. Can I? Okay, that's all right. No worries. So probabilistically speaking, your business is more likely to fail than succeed, right? So you're an unreasonable human being to begin with, right? Despite knowing that you're more likely to fail, you and me, us dreamers, we believe that we're going to succeed. We are unreasonable romantics. Us unreasonable romantics, we can visualize what success would mean. We can visualize what our end product could look like. because we have spent time trying to understand what the customer's needs are. Right? We've done all of those shit. We have done all of that. So I want you to take a step ahead and visualize who your end customer is. The better you visualize that, the better your marketing communication is going to be. Rushing forward, once you have done your market, your customer segment, and your persona, I want you to start thinking as deep as possible. What is the value that you're offering? The value proposition. See, all of these things are paramount, because if you don't do that, you cannot build a marketing strategy. You won't have a strategy. What is the strategy going to be? The strategy is going to talk about what value you're giving to the customer, and you have to know who the customer is, and then you would know whether that value makes sense to you or not. So motherhood statement time. You decide the price. As the business, you decide the price, but you don't decide the value. Value is decided by your customer. So when I ask people, what's the value you give to your customers? They basically think this is the value. The only people who will decide whether there's value or not is the end customer, the paying customer, right? And Apple's super clever in this. That's why they say, "Mera lakh rupiya ka phone mein," this is not an Apple, this is a 10,000 rupees phone, right? But assume this for a second, this is an Apple. Ye mera lakh rupiya ka phone, right? Isme 5 camera, 600 megapixel camera, whatever, all those fancy things. Apple doesn't sell like that. Apple says, "Mera jo phone hai, is phone se you will be able to capture moments which will become part of your memory, will be etched." So that first time your daughter walked, that memory, what is it worth? It should be priceless. Apple's very clever. In all their ads are like that, right? And a boy and girl sitting on a park, halki barish ho rahi hai, little bubbles in the air, there's a rainbow inside the bloody bubbles, little dog walking by the side, lush green, the boy and girl is just about to sort of, embrace or kiss. Just that moment, halki barish. Whoa, I hope you can imagine that. That picture is worth more than 1 lakh. Now, will an Oppo phone not do it? Possibly it will do it. But Apple sells it for 1 lakh. They can't say that you need this camera to get that picture. They say that you need an Apple, because Apple gives you memories. That's beautiful. Apple's been doing that forever, right? And they say, and dimag mein dal deta, could be something else. Forget about all those fancy pictures. My son is 18 years old. He will possibly want an Apple phone, which I just don't care anymore about. But my son cares that he would like his friends to know that he has an Apple phone. So the value is something else over there. The value's got nothing to do with the picture. The value is that mere baare mein log kya samjhenge, right? Now, so the value is not decided by you. The value is decided by your customers, and I want you to go and check what you think is value proposition, whether the customers feel the same or not. And you may be surprised. Going forward, based on the market, your customer segment, your persona, your value, you establish relationships. No other way. So you figure out what kind of relationship, what depth of the relationship that you have got. And then you decide your channels. Those of you who've done a business model canvas, you will realize these are all points from business model canvas, right? And then you decide what your channel of it is. So people come in and ask them, what's your marketing strategy? They say, oh, word of mouth. It worries the living daylights out of me. Right? I mean, it's like saying, aapka plan kya hai bada hoke? Sir, main bada hoke ek acha aadmi banunga. Right? It's a wonderful plan to have, but it doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. Right? Because acha aadmi ka definition will vary from person to person. Right? So word of mouth is like that. Everybody wants to have great word of mouth. But then how do you ensure, right? What is great word of mouth? How do you get that done? So channel, it has to be customized based on what is it that you're trying to sell? Who is it that you're trying to sell to? What is the value proposition that your customer thinks you have? Based on that is the channel. That's where the communication is going to go. And you need to think, a lot of depth is required in this thinking. Then you obviously will have to think about your competition. So I recommend that you do a SWOT of your own business. I also recommend that you do a SWOT of your customers. And this is something that you may want to keep a note on. A lot of startups don't do that. Companies that I work with, I get them to do extensive, exhaustive SWOT analysis of their customers, because their weaknesses should be your strengths. Their threats could be your opportunities. Exactly the opposite is true. Somebody is going to be watching for your weaknesses and your threats. Okay. And then you also must remember, it's not just competition, it's also substitution. It's a very powerful word, depending on what product you're selling. Like, for example, if you are selling electric vehicles, let's assume for a second, a very low-end, smaller price, lesser priced four-wheeler or a two-wheeler, you could get substituted by not necessarily a competitive product, but by Uber. So people tend to substitute things. You may feel that your competition, if you're Mahindra, your competition is Toyota. But if you're Mahindra and if you're at a certain price range, your competition can very well be Uber. I hope this makes some sense in your mind. You start thinking about it and you will see you have far more competition than you thought you do. Okay. For example, IPL is a competitor to Z or Sony, who makes TV series, right? If a large number of women prefer watching TV series, for example, and a large number of men prefer watching IPL. This has been, I'm sorry to make it stereotypical, but that, these are broad-based divisions. In this large number of divisions, what if some women start getting interested in IPL, which happened at the beginning, and a lot of women caught on to that. They like watching IPL. It's an exciting thing, which means they've shifted perhaps at that point in time between 7:30 to 10:30. They're not watching TV series, they're watching IPL. So all of a sudden, a Saas Bahu series, which is to be very popular, its TRP may go down because IPL is going on. And of course, IPL is the biggest thing that happens on television. And advertisements are, cost prices are the highest, the channels that are showing IPL as compared to the other ones. So substitution may work in very weird ways. Moving on. Based on all of these things, market, customer segment, persona, value proposition from a customer's point of view, relationships, channel, right? Competition, substitution, all of these things, once you've got all of these things, that's when you start thinking about pricing. And then you get into the big question. Once you're still done, and I'm going to run out of time, so I'm not going to stop over here, but you're welcome to stop if you want to. You need to ask yourself, why customers will still buy? Why am I relevant? And I want you to be obsessed about this. You know, I've had the privilege of working with some outstanding people, entrepreneurs, as well as senior, not necessarily senior, at times they're not very senior, but outstanding professionals. It doesn't matter whether they're entrepreneurs or not, outstanding professionals. And they're obsessed about customers. And they're perpetually thinking why customers will still buy from them. Why is it that they're going to buy? All of those put together, and that's when you sort of come to this. Why will they buy from me? And then the obsession needs to continue. How do we know customers are happy? If you start thinking about these questions, you will realize this is what constitute or should constitute a marketing plan, but it doesn't. 9 out of 10 marketing plans that come to me are pointless. They're bogus. They're made as an afterthought. If a marketing plan does not tell me why customers will buy from me or how customers are going to be happy, this is a pointless marketing plan to have. And then comes the most important component. This is where I'm going to stop for 30 seconds and ask you a question. What do you think is the most important currency in business? I repeat the question. What do you think is the most important currency in business?
Trust.
To have profitability. Fair enough. Good. Sorry? Neeraj, did you say something?
Trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Amit has written customer feedback and trust. Yes, trust. Manoj has written the same thing. In fact, we all know this, that intuitively we know it's the most important thing, but then it's the hardest thing. Right? But as a founder, you don't have that luxury. You don't have the luxury of making mistakes again and again and staying in business. I want you to imbibe this I'm sure most of you already are full of this, but I want you to imbibe this so much so that every hiring you do, every person that you get into your team, if you decide to partner with a co-founder, notwithstanding whatever the skills that person brings, customer and the importance of customer and why you need to be obsessed about customer, if this is not a uniform, common binding sort of lowest denominator, common binding aspect, don't partner with that guy, don't hire that person, don't work with that person, because this is, I think, hard to teach, right? Maybe time will teach, experiences will teach, but you don't have time. You don't have the luxury of time. Your startups, you don't have money, but what you really don't have is you don't have time. So the most important currency in business, which can ensure a business can grow to unbelievable heights or bottomless pits, is trust. So you want to ensure that you win that trust and you stay in, you honor that trust as long as you can. Now, marketing strategy is not just about making a sale happen. We all know that selling to an existing customer is so much cheaper than getting a new customer. We all know that. So a marketing strategy needs to continue. If you go with the last question, is how do we know customers are happy? A marketing strategy must have thereby this happiness quotient as well, whether the customers will come back to you again or not. So most important currency is trust. You need to ensure that the trust is won on a continuous basis and retained. And that completes perhaps a marketing strategy. And that I finish it with again saying business model, all of these things put together. The business model is not simple. You don't have a marketing strategy. Now, if you have all of these things done, these are distributaries, and then there's one big river over there. If you have all of these things done, you will have revenue streams. And then, of course, if you have all of these things put together, our dude is over here. I don't know, I think many of you are very young. You would possibly not be able to remember Ajay Devgan's first movie. He came riding on a bike like that. I still remember. I think, just finished college. Can't remember the name of the movie. Anybody remembers the name of this movie? No.
I think Vijaypat or something. No, something like that. No, Vijaypat or something like that.
Vijaypat was like Fool or Kate. That is correct.
Yeah, indeed.
There are some Ajay Devgan fans over here. Yes, Fool or Kate. I think that's what it was. And I remember the whole hall. I used to live abroad, but I was visiting India at that point in time. And obviously, once you come to India, you need to go and watch Hindi movies in cinema halls. And I went and saw this, and I used to like, and I still like watching movies in the first few rows. The energy is just unbelievable. For example, I've traveled for work to Madras, Chennai, and I've watched Shivaji, Rajinikanth movies. So Fool or Kate was a movie I saw from the first few halls. And I obviously, Paisa Vaisa Phekna, I know, fantastic. And people went crazy. And I remember one person sitting somewhere said that, "Ab baki hero ka vaat lag gaya." I still remember that. Because nobody else could do that, right? Nobody else could sort of do splits, and nobody else was brave enough or stupid enough, depending on what you have been smoking in the morning, ki bike mein is tarah se entry marega. So for me, business is fraught with risks, right? Businesses have risks. Now, you need to evaluate that. These risks are not just your risks. These risks are all kinds of risks. And I recommend, that's what was there also in my earlier homework that those of you have had the chance to see. Michael Porter, for example, Michael Porter specifically, created a framework, a model. It's called the Porter's 5 Forces, which he obviously did it for very large corporations. So I think it's relevant for everybody. And I recommend that you read about it and you try and do that. You'll see that every business have risks, and risks could be because of your customers, risk could be because of your suppliers, employees, all of them. Risk could be because of your competition. There are all kinds of risks. All of those risks put together, you need to keep that in mind. Because a marketing strategy which does not understand business risks is of no value. the marketing strategy needs to be a reflection of the business that you are doing, right? So if I am starting a startup and I have very limited financial background, I have limited access to market, I cannot be at the same place as another gentleman who's starting a startup, who lives in somewhere in South Bombay and lives in a house which costs, say, 13,000 crore rupees. Right? Mukesh Ambani's son, right, highly capable person, I'm pretty sure, but has certain accesses which you don't have, I'm assuming, right? And similarly, you may have certain accesses which somebody perhaps in a tier 4 city or town may not have. So we need to understand your realities, figure out your risks, and the marketing strategy needs to reflect all of that. And thereby the 5 forces you should do. So suppliers, so they bring certain kinds of risks. Suppliers are, your outflows, not just your suppliers, right? So any expense that you have, they could be pretty dolls like this, or they could be not so pretty like these. Similarly, you could perhaps have buyers, which is to me inflows, and I want you to think about your buyers. So my customer is more likely to do what is a very critical. That's why you need to understand the market, the customer segment, and the persona. What is the person more likely to do? You want to be able to sort of visualize that. We are living in the future. Marketing strategy is a lot about the future. You need to visualize how the person's going to react. And based on that is what you're going to build. And after all of these things, you're going to go out and catch them. And this is what I would recommend that you do. I'm going to share this, don't worry. It's a free book that you can buy on, I've forgotten the name of the author. You can buy it on Kindle. It's called the One-Page Marketing Plan. I use this. I use this for businesses which are way beyond startups, right? Because I like things simple. So I'll give you an example of using this. Let's assume for a second I am in, let's say, hey Neera, which part of the country are you from?
Mumbai, Maharashtra.
Maharashtra. Where in Mumbai do you stay?
I stay in Thane, which is the central part.
Thane. Fantastic. I went to school in Thane, class 7 and 8, St. John Baptist High School. Small little world. Yeah.
Right.
Next to the Talav, right? Of course, Thane is very different than what it used to be in the 80s.
Yes.
Now, let's assume for a second, Neera, that you have decided to launch a shoe brand in Thane. Okay. And you've identified that you are going to use environment-friendly material to make your shoes. Okay. So there's a company called Neiman's in Delhi which is doing that. So you can actually check out what they're doing. It's called Neiman's, N-E-E-M-A-N-S. It's become very popular now. I know it because my wife and my son have bought very expensive shoes from there, and I could not understand why it's such a big deal. But my son is at that age where he needs to impress his girlfriend, and my wife, of course, she's a lady and she has 700 shoes. I have only 3 pairs. So I got to know about Neiman's. Now, assume for a second, like Neiman's, you've decided to have this fantastic shoe brand and you want to sell to some people and you want to do it in Thane, right? So your target market, you should define keeping these realities in mind, right? Who's the market? Who is it that you're going to sell to in Thane? You're thinking about opening a shop maybe as well, right? A fancy showroom. Now that COVID is almost gone. And then you decide what is your message to that target market. Right? ये मार्केट जो आपने आइडेंटिफाई किया है, इसमें कस्टमर सेगमेंट जो आपने आइडेंटिफाई किया, पर्सोना जो आइडेंटिफाई किया है कि 17-18 साल के जो लड़के हैं उन लोग को या लड़कियों को आप टारगेट करना चाहते हो, and late 40s में some women who are working, she needs comfortable shoes, she typically uses Skechers but she wants something more than Skechers, something better, right? So and both of these segments are environment friendly. So I've identified the target market and you have now saying what is the message that I need to have. Now, these are 2 separate groups of people. 17, 18, 19 people will react to a different messaging. than say a 47, 48, 49-year-old lady, right?
Yeah.
Which is what my wife is. She's 47 and a half. So you want to look at her and you want to look at my son who's about to be 18. Two separate market segments, but similar. You're going to, you know, many people can buy events, but you have to identify these two segments and your messaging will be for these two. And then you choose your message लेके कैसे जाएगा, कौन लेके जाएगा, आपका channel of communication क्या हो,
Media.
the media I will use to reach my target market. How will I go? So my wife may respond more to Facebook, and my son may respond more to say Instagram, right? And I may say that I will possibly use this to let them know that there is the store that's going to be open. And you want to tell these people that, hey, come to the store and check out these shoes, etc. And you're, you know, giving me the spiel about how you're environment friendly, etc., stylish, blah, blah, blah. And then this is the before phase. This is the prospecting phase of the business. Now you're getting into the during phase where you've got these people. Whole bunch of people have responded to your advertisements and have shared their email addresses and their telephone numbers, and you're compiling data about who these people are over a period of time. And now you've got a lead capture system. You've got all of these people. Now you need to nurture this. So you can keep sending more information. You find out that my wife is a doctor, right? So, you know, you got a little bit more. So you've got this all professional sort of, you know, professional homemakers, women of a certain age. So you want to know, why is it that you want to buy these shoes? Why? Oh, comfort is of paramount importance, because I walk a lot, because my wife walks a lot, right? Okay. So the more you make my wife realize that she walks a lot, so she needs a comfortable shoe, she's actually reducing her defenses to buy your shoe. So the more you let her know that, remind her of the realities of her life, the more akin to she is to buying a shoe which is comfortable to walk in. This is exactly the marketing strategy Skechers uses. Skechers has sort of told the world that you need to use Skechers because it's the most comfortable to walk in. Now, that could be true, but may not be true. I'm not sure Nike or Adidas is not comfortable to walk in. They're equally comfortable to walk, right? Now, but they have been able to convince all of us that Skechers is the lightest shoe around. Frankly speaking, whether your shoe is 225 grams or 230 grams should make no difference to your feet. But Skechers is so smart. It's the lightest, it's the easiest, it's got cushion or whatever it is. You know? So you're now nurturing the system. You're saying, hey, you must be stupid if you're not using this. So you're putting that in the person's mind. Itna kuch ho gaya, you're saying, ab dukaan aaiye. Hamara Fridays ko, we are, because you got your mind, son, right? It's 18. You're saying, if you come to the store on Fridays, we have live music happening, right? We have young bands coming and doing their music. You can listen to them, try out the shoes. If you like it, buy it. If you don't like it, don't buy it. That's a sales conversion strategy. You got these guys to come, already उसका डिफेंस नीचे हो गया, उसको लेके आया, आपको पता चल गया उसको गाना बजाना पसंद है, उसको थोड़ा सा रॉक म्यूजिक सुना भी दिया है, ये जूता पहन के नाचो और अच्छे लगोगे, ब्ला ब्ला ब्ला, सेल्स कन्वर्जन स्ट्रेटजी इज हैपनिंग, राइट? ना हो गया, बच्चा मेरा जूता खरीद के, राइट, पेटीएम में पापा को फोन किया, पापा मुझे पैसा दो, पापा पैसा दिया, पेटीएम कर लिया, जूता लेके घर आ गया. Now you want to deliver, this is after, you want to deliver an outstanding customer experiences. So you check with this person, right? Maybe 7 days or 2 weeks or a month later. Or juta le jate waqt, you tell that person, just that Skechers does. I don't know whether you guys know or not. You can go and replace a Skechers shoe anytime without any questions asked in the first 3 months, right? It's so powerful. Those guys are so powerful. They don't tell this to everybody, but they will tell this to people who are on the borderlines. It's there in their terms and conditions. As long as you've not damaged the shoe willfully, they will say, boss, I will change it. If they feel that you're not going to close the sale, they're going to tell you that, right? So you're going to deliver a world-class experience. Why? Because you want to increase the customer's lifetime value. You were saying, hey, Aditya, now that your shoe is fantastic and you're loving it, maybe your girlfriend may want to buy it. Maybe your friends may want to buy it. Maybe your mother may want to buy it. She's an environment lover. She walks a lot, right? So you're increasing the customer's lifetime value. Or maybe you want to buy another pair, right? And then you are orchestrating and stimulating referrals. Hey, Aditya, if you do this, the next time you buy shoes, it's going to be 25% off for you. Cult Fit, for example, gives, instead of giving you money, gives you free gym membership for the next 2 months. So you're incentivizing it. This is a very simple one-page marketing plan, which I use a lot. It's freely available and you can use this. Now, if you have different customer segments, I recommend you make different one-page marketing plans. If you have different types of products, you make different marketing plans. So you customize as per your need. I'm woefully out of time. I'm going to go super quick. This is your homework. You and I may not meet again unless you choose to. This is what I do. You may want to, this deck will be shared with you. This is the flow that we followed. Right at the end is something called customer discovery model. There's a professor called Stephen Blank. I recommend you read his book. It's called 4 Steps to Epiphany. 4 Steps to Epiphany. He says customer discovery is a far more important thing to do than product discovery. So you change everything and put customer at the center of your work. There's another professor called Bill Ollett. He teaches in MIT. His business, his contribution to the world has been with a book, according to me, one of the finest books I've read, called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. All of these things will require discipline. All of these things will essentially are telling you that customer is the center of your heart. Stephen Blank, 4 Steps to Epiphany, and Disciplined Entrepreneurship from Bill Ollett, B-I-L-L Ollett, A-U-L-E-T. And the marketing plan thereby would be the targets, where are you going to do it, who are you doing it for, how are you going to do it, when will you be doing this, who will be doing this, by whom, and KPIs that you set for, what are the performance indices, the budget, and then how do you monitor. And then once you've done all of these things, you iterate the damn thing, right? Like we just discussed a little while back, it's not a one-time exercise. It's a continuous exercise. Just between you and me, for my more stable businesses, we usually do a marketing plan once a year, but we review it every quarter. And the startups that I work with, I get them to do it every month, because your world's going to change way faster than more stable businesses, right? There is HubSpot has a very nice marketing plan template which you can download. It's free. So you can just go to HubSpot, go marketing plan template. You should be able to get it. Download it. It comes in a Word document, but it's a bit too complicated. I think a one-page marketing plan is what you should do. That's the one-page one. Once more, it's the HubSpot one. These are the tools I use. You may find these to be too much, too little. It's up to you. I use all of these tools. All of these tools are taught in B schools, but then all of these tools they teach in B schools, keeping large companies in mind. I want you to do them for your own business. I want you to learn how the frameworks and the tools work. I do all of these things on a regular basis. I advise all businesses that I work in as a consultant to do them. Any startup I invest in, they have to do them. Otherwise, I don't invest money in them. And funded startups who at times hire me, I make sure that they do all these things. Yes, the marketing plan happens only after you've done all of those things at the top. For me, marketing plans, the toughest thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to do. All of the rest are tough things to do. I know most of them are known to you. Epiphany, we spoke about 7 domains you may or may not do. It's a professor from my college, London Business School. He wrote it called John Mullins. 5 Forces is Porter. Value chain analysis is also Porter. And then unit economics, you understand budget, break-even, cash flow, etc. And all of those things, at the end of that, you figure out what is customer delight again? Why is the customer going to buy from me? And why will the customer stay happy with me? And how do I know the customer trusts me, right? Only then will you be able to figure out referrals. Once you have got all of these things in mind, you have a marketing plan set out. And as I finish, anybody knows who this lady is?
Oracle.
Yes, Prabhu, you're my most favorite person right now. Absolutely, she's the Oracle. There is no life without matrix, of course. Just when you feel that you know everything, I want you to please remember this. Just when you do, you need to, and when you do, you stop. And then you please remember this slide of mine.
We have a right to let
Right. I have to keep reminding this to everybody, including myself. Right. There's no one size that fits all. Everything else works. Marketing is the only thing that doesn't, because customers come in different sizes, shapes, and moods. Right. Somebody may decide to do something in the morning and not in the afternoon. Right. So, your best laid plan may be left completely shattered because, I don't know, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Unless your name is Google, stop acting like you know everything. I love that quote. And as we finish, I'm inviting you to start this journey. Measure, learn, build, and then finally iterate, iterate, iterate. This is a favorite expression of mine. Every plan is a good one till the first shot is fired. I think it's a great one. So the best marketing plan that you make after listening to me is most likely going to be completely useless the first time you go and meet the customer. But I want you to continue doing this and never imagine that you have understood it fully. I want you to be scared. Those of you who have come to Calcutta, there's a place called Esplanade in Calcutta. In Esplanade, it's a huge area where, like tons of buses going everywhere, trucks, goats, cows, whatever, cars, bikes, and a whole bunch of people who seem to know where they're going. Most of them have no clue where they're going. Why Esplanade? Is because Esplanade is my favorite place, because I believe a lot of people die in Esplanade. Because Esplanade, bus drivers go completely ballistic. They have their targets, right? Is sabta kitne ko mara hai. So when you cross Esplanade ka bada traffic intersection, you don't close your eyes. You are very careful. You are watching non-stop through direct and peripheral vision, and you're watching those bus drivers, whether they're out to get you. And the important part is that the plan's not important. What is important is the state of planning is important. Marketing is not a one-time plan, it's a state of planning. Right? And then you start thinking what will happen to this world, to you, to us. My favorite quote, apparently, Einstein said this. I don't believe that. Einstein ke naam pe hum log kuch bhi bol dete hain. But the quote is fantastic, right? There is no way you can get better in marketing unless you fall in love with it. If this bothers you, you should change your vocation. So sorry to say this. And don't think you'll be able to hire two cool dudes who are going to come and do it for you. And please don't send me a message saying, all that was great. Can you please tell me who can do my marketing? You got to do your own marketing, at least a part, and then you can hire the smart guys who will come and do this, whatever it is. But you have to do it. It's your responsibility. I'm not going to spend my time on this. And that is me. That's your marketing pitch. That's what you're doing. Turn around, give me a selfie. It's going to come and hit you really hard. And I finished it 4 minutes before time. So sorry, I wanted to finish a little earlier. We don't have much time. I'm happy to take a few questions if you guys have any. Thank you, Jiskiran.
Hi, interesting, very insightful. I have a question around this no questions asked refund policy that we spoke about. And of course, it's a very, very powerful strategy.
Yeah.
To have for a start. But how feasible is there has to be some
So I know, Nirav. I mean,
to the guide.
Yeah. So I don't have statistics to support whether how many shoes do they actually refund. I don't know. I don't know how many people actually go back. I have a feeling that the product's so good that most people don't go back. When I heard about this, it's the first time I'm wearing Skechers. My wife's been wearing Skechers for a long time. And this is the way she converted me as a customer. The shop, the store manager, is a young girl, and she said, "Oh, sorry, you can just come back and change your." I said, "फिर ठीक है, लेके जाता है 2.5 महीने में दोबारा change के नया जूता ले लेंगे." Yes, absolutely, please go ahead and do it. But you know what, Neera, I forgot to go.
Yeah.
So I suspect this is a well thought out plan, but then this may not be possible for every business. This may not be possible for startups. I want you to use that as a metaphor. You have to figure out how you're going to keep. Your objective is that the customer is trust. Right? The customer must feel, yeah, बेच के भाग नहीं जाती हो.
Sorry, I lost you in between. Can you please repeat
Okay.
that?
Yeah, I'm saying you use this juta change as a metaphor and think, how do you ensure that the customer keeps trusting you and believes that you're going to hang around? Ab bhagne nahi wali ho, bech ke bhag nahi jaoge, right? That's all that I think I wanted to emphasize on. But I found that strategy of Sketches to be brilliant because I wanted to go back and change my shoes, but I forgot. So I suspect it kind of worked for them. But yeah, your point taken. I mean, may not work for every business, of course.
So yeah, Sketches is of course a very big brand. So maybe, they would have proper laid out systems and they would have done their thorough research and all. But I see a lot of edtech companies also going for this kind of a strategy. And I always wonder as to, then what is the control? How do you keep a tab on,
Well, that's what business in many ways is. See, in the world of marketing, for example, digital marketing, there's a concept called performance marketing, right? So one of my companies that I'm associated with has got tons and tons of digital marketers. We have back-end marketers for a large number of other companies. So we have one division called search engine optimization. We have 400 plus people working over there, right? Most of them are on fixed contracts. Customers pay us a certain sum of money and we do search engine optimization for them. But the new thing that's happening for larger corporations is they don't pay us a fixed amount of money. They pay us for results, right? So which is very dangerous. It's the same thing, right? It's very dangerous. What if they don't pay us? What if we don't get results, etc., right? So it's exactly the same thing. So you have to figure out whatever your business is based on that, right? What is it that you can offer to the customer, which will make the customer believe that you are the one to go to, and you're not going to vanish, and the customer has control. See, the important part over here is that the customer must feel that he or she has control and not you. Now, you put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Why is it that we are worried about going to new people? Because we feel we lose control. Those people may run away because they have control. What if you had the control? Right? So exactly the same things. If you can keep the psyche in mind, maybe you'll be able to sort of customize your deliveries. But you're right. This is performance-based is becoming more and more common. A lot of edtech companies are doing it. A lot of people are doing it. For example, healthcare cannot do that, right? You cannot say heart operation. If you're not happy with it, I will eat. Right? So or food, it's happening a lot now. If you're unhappy with it, I will refund the money.
Right.
Yeah. But you get the sense.
Thank you.
Any other last question from anybody else? No, I suppose not. Oh, there you go then. Meher, Isha, I'm only 1 minute past time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that despite your technical challenges, I think the session went off good.
There was a video that I could not show, but it's okay, it's not an important video.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll send not just this time's deck, but the last time, we'll package both together and send it out. Thank you for the session. I know some people